Despite a downturn in funding last year, as well as tightening conditions, Africa-focused funds still found their footing. Now, experts have noted new African and Africa-focused funds are emerging, with several of the existing ones still receiving fresh backing. Well, one of them is Innovate Africa, an angel investment fund that supports early-stage founders in funding life-changing ideas, as well as taking startups from conception to product and also financing innovative ventures. Now, the organization has launched with an initial $2.5 million rollout, and it says it aims to support up to 20 startups in its first year. Well, let's find out all about this from the co-founder and managing partner of Innovate Africa Fund, Kristin Wilson. She joins us now in Lagos, Nigeria. Great to have you on the show with us today, Kristin. Now, it's interesting. You say that the goal of your fund is to provide insight-driven capital. What exactly does that mean? What does it look like?
So it looks like a data-driven approach, and I should just say thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Essentially, what we want to make sure is that we're backing founders who the data bears out are worth backing. And so over the African ecosystem, as you're aware, is pretty early stage. But thankfully, we're at a stage where there's a treasure trove of data that can tell us which sorts of companies are backable and which sorts of companies should be amplified. And that is what we mean by insight-driven capital, is that we now have, a lot of the pioneers in the ecosystem, we're really charting out the path. They didn't have all of the information and all of the resources and tools that we now have today. So launching at this point is strategic.
Well, we'll get into a little bit more into what exactly that entails. But first, you did mention that the fund has an average investment of about $50,000. We'd like to get some insight into how exactly you plan to channel this $2.5 million into these various businesses and ideas, and also some of the projects you're looking to support.
Yes, so thankfully we're sector agnostic, and instead the strategy for founders and ventures that we're selecting is something that we call solving the wicked problem. So we're looking for ventures, for solutions, for entrepreneurs that are solving extremely painful and extremely wicked problems, right? That have the capacity for, when solved, to be transformative for their communities, for the continent. And so our allocation of capital, now we are an angel fund, right? So that 50,000 ticket size, relatively small, in the grand scheme of venture capital. But the idea for our fund is that it's catalytic, right? In the same way that an angel investor is catalytic for the founder that they support in those very, very early stages. We're approximating that same support. And it's important that we do this because over the past couple of years, we've seen an increasing exodus of investors. So comparing this, about 400 investors, is about a 400 investor difference, unique investor difference between 2022 and 2023, right? But we are seeing great innovation. On average, the ecosystem is performing better. And so we see that there is a critical opportunity to back founders at the earliest stages, especially given that we have the data to be able to pick winners.
And I guess I would love to get more insight into how this is different when it comes to Africa-focused funds, Africa-focused startups, and specifically, what are the challenges that you saw when it comes to African startups and founders that led you to come up with this type of fund?
Right. So I think the journey to fundraising, particularly when we talk about VC winter, which is much of the narrative these days, there's less and less capital available for founders. And even when there was a little bit more capital, there was so much going on in the ecosystem. It's a very interesting time now because there has been a kind of natural decline in the number of ventures that are operating, in the number of ventures that are being started up compared to 2021 and 2022. But you are also seeing more experienced founders, more resilient founders. And so it's sort of like a prime time to say, we can now look and say, who's starting and how do we back them in a way that reduces the amount of pain that they go through, right? Trying to set up their business, trying to validate. And that's why we've identified our niche as that path between MVP and finding product market fit. That's really where we want to intervene, how we want to allocate that capital and support the founders that we work with.
Mm. And when you say we are certainly in interesting times, is it just about that approach or is it about funding too? Because experts have pointed to the fact that there's a downturn in funding, tightening conditions globally. How has this all impacted Africa-focused startups and funds? What's your take on the overall landscape today?
Right. So the macroeconomic conditions are tough, right, globally, no matter how you slice it. But the thing is that the opportunity, the problems need to be solved. And what we have seen, despite the funding winter, despite the cash crunch, is that when solutions have emerged that have been truly transformative, capital has mobilized around them. So what's really happening, particularly in the African ecosystem, as it's maturing, right? Because remember, where the ecosystem is maturing. So as it's maturing, we are seeing investors pulling back, right? So instead of that gold rush where everyone was trying to, not everyone, but many people were entering, the investment ecosystem and just, throwing things and looking to see what sticks. Investors are now making more strategic decisions. They're now looking to see, okay, who has the right business fundamentals? Is this a sustainable business model? What is the problem opportunity? So despite the sort of macroeconomic outlook, there is fundamentally a massive opportunity for both transformative impact and returns for investors still on the continent. And this means, of course, that, yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and what this means is that promising founders, especially founders who maybe didn't quite get it right the first time around or have operated in other companies globally, and see that there's something that they can contribute, they can look to our fund, they can look to Innovate Africa as their partner for getting it right. And again, because our pathway is data-driven and is really centered around this idea of find product market fit by solving a real and deep and wicked problem, we're making sure that the founders that we're backing have a higher likelihood of success.
Well, Kristin, we do have to leave it there, but it was certainly a great discussion. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We look forward to having you back. That, of course, is Kristin Wilson. She is a managing partner and co-founder at the Innovate Africa Fund.